Hello and welcome to the FPL News channel. This is a press conference roundup ahead of Gameweek 15, the deadline for which is at 1:30 p.m. GMT on Saturday, tomorrow. We'll dive straight into Man City. Erling Haaland is better according to Guardiola, but there's a decision going to be made on his involvement from training which was taking place as per after Guardiola's press conference. As I and many others in fairness tweeted about, Haaland was in training yesterday, that being Thursday. From the video, it looks like he trained as fully as you could. Obviously, certain players weren't training because they had a game the previous day, so that means is it actually full training when it's not the whole squad? And what they'd be doing, we won't have that information, but from the video it did look like he was doing the same thing as all the other players were doing. I'd imagine today's training on Friday would have involved everybody that's going to be available for the match, and yeah, we won't get anything on that realistically, not off Man City anyway. But in my opinion, it looks fine for Haaland. I own him, as do millions. The injury, from what we know and what we can see, I guess, was an impact injury to his foot. It kind of reminds me of what Mitrovic had, or probably still has, there when he missed a game. I think he missed Gameweek 8, Mitrovic, and he was back again after that. And then he missed games again, and he got a pain-killing injection and has been playing away since his kind of second return there, Mitrovic, and it was a foot problem. It seems like could be something similar. I don't know that exactly, but just from the information that I've kind of gathered, that seems like the story. So if that is the case with Haaland, you might expect that he will get some minutes in Gameweek 15, considering that he's been back on the grass with the team. So I suppose fingers crossed in that sense. I suppose the good or bad thing, depending on your location, I guess, and availability tomorrow, is that because the deadline being at 1:30, that means early team news is possible for City, who play at 3 o'clock. We got it last week. They were playing at 12:30. The deadline was 11. At about 11:15, team news and Ticks, who I'm sure anyone watching this will probably follow or know about, who often has team leaks for multiple clubs, said that Haaland and Foden weren't in the 11, which proved to be true. That was about 15 minutes before the deadline, and then I think about 2 minutes before deadline, but that was when I clicked onto it, so I'm not exactly sure. But in the final few minutes before deadline, the FPL site crashed, which caused a lot of people problems because they hadn't made their transfers. The same thing could happen tomorrow. So the deadline is at 1:30. Hopefully, if there is a team leak, it will be 15 minutes before that, 1:15, which is GMT, UK Ireland time. I would advise that you get your moves done as soon as possible after the leak, if there is one. I wouldn't be leaving it to the last 5 minutes before deadline because, excuse me, there's the chance that the FPL site crashes again because it can't deal with the traffic that those team leaks are bringing. So yeah, there's no guarantee there will be a leak, but if there is, I would suggest that you have your plans kind of in place, either on one of those planning sites or written down or in your head, like contingencies on what you will do. For example, I currently have Haaland as captain. If there is nothing, I will probably just leave it on him. If there's absolutely no information from what we know now at the time of this video, I will probably leave it on him anyway, I think. If we get a leak that he's not starting, I will take it off him. If we get a leak that he's not in the squad at all, I will probably look at selling him. I'm going to make that plan, to be honest, after this video, but I'm going to be fairly clear in my mind of what I will do if those kind of different eventualities happen. So I'd advise doing that, because 15 minutes to deadline, you have to, in your head, really think that you've got only 10 minutes. So it leaves very little time for actually constructing plans. And obviously everyone's team is different. Some people only have 2 City. It makes it a lot easier to know what you're going to do. 3 City, like myself, is a bit harder. I guess De Bruyne is the one you would want as captain if Haaland isn't starting, or certainly if he's not in the squad. It would be tempting to go and get De Bruyne, but obviously if you have 3 City, that involves a hit if you've only got 1 free transfer. If you've got 2 free transfers, again, things are a bit different. So yeah, like everybody's situation is different, same every week. Nobody can tell you what the best thing to do is for however many million teams there are. But having a plan before the possible leak is definitely a good idea. Same thing with Phil Foden. We got the leak with him last week, so the hope is that we will get that again. As we know, right now he's not carrying an injury. He obviously played on Wednesday. People more in the know than me on Man City and what Pep does with his lineups, which I have a decent knowledge of, but not as much as someone you also probably know, FF Scout Luke, who is excellent on that. He thinks that Foden starting midweek is irrelevant to what Pep will do on Saturday, which I accept. And I agree with what he says on it. I think my opinion on Foden would change if he doesn't start again. That would be 3 times in a row. That would probably change my outlook on it. And I also own Foden in FPL. Obviously this depends on Haaland as well, but if Foden isn't starting and Haaland is, I would be tempted to sell Foden. See, I also own Mitrovic, who I also kind of want to sell to get Wilson in. But like, nobody would be surprised if Mitrovic scored against Man City at the same time. We'll do Fulham in a bit, but Marco Silva has said like that Fulham are going to play the same way that they play every week. They're going to try and attack City. So I don't think Mitrovic is the worst hold, but at the same time, if I have no other issues, it will probably be Mitrovic out, and a lot of people probably be in the same situation. But I think if I found out that Foden was on the bench again, I would be more tempted to sell him and keep Mitrovic. If I had to make a predicted lineup, I would put Foden in it. I do think he'll start. I also think that if he doesn't start, there's something else going on, but that's, getting into the realms of speculation, which I'm trying my best to stay away from. It's not really that helpful. Also not helpful is what Pep has said on Foden being benched for the last 2 PL games. So during the week he got asked about it. He said there's no particular reason. That's obviously nonsense. There would have been a particular reason. Whatever it was, nobody really believes that Guardiola is just like, I'm benching Foden and I've got no reason for it whatsoever. That's not true. He got asked about it again today, and he just reeled off a list of players who have also been subs in recent games here and there. All his other attackers and stuff like that. So basically he said nothing on it. So yeah, it will be interesting on Foden if he's starting or not, and hopefully we might find out before the deadline. But again, there is no guarantee of that. Otherwise for City, Manuel Akanji is fine. Walker and Phillips are still out. Pep gets questioned on them every week, even though he said a couple of weeks ago they're not going to play before the World Cup. Walker's not even in training. And, there's a week, 8 days, 9 days left before the Premier League break, so he's clearly not going to play. And in fairness, Guardiola already said that. Phillips was also pictured in training, in fairness, and doing the same training that Haaland was doing. But his shoulder issue means that he's not playing this weekend, and I'd say it's extremely unlikely that he plays next weekend, especially considering Guardiola kind of ruled him out already. Now, obviously, the fact that he's in training videos and pictures and stuff, he's going to get asked about him. But yeah, can't see Phillips playing this weekend or next weekend. Obviously, there's midweek games too. I can't see him playing that either. And Guardiola was also asked if City were preparing and training, like using Haaland as kind of a mirror of what Mitrovic might try to do against him, and he basically said no, that they hadn't time. They played midweek. As I tweeted about, some players were like in recovery. They would have been doing recovery work on Thursday after the Wednesday match. That's standard. For example, that's why Foden, you can see him in the video, but he's not in the training session. But that's because he played the whole game there against Sevilla. And that's mostly the reason why other players weren't involved if they logged a lot of minutes against Sevilla. It's just recovery work, and Guardiola said that in his quotes, that players were doing recovery yesterday. He said they were doing recovery yesterday, and that there might still be some tired bodies today. Obviously, they hadn't had training by the time his press conference on today. And within all of that, he said that some players who didn't play midweek will feature against Fulham. No big surprise there either. Players such as Cancelo, De Bruyne, Ederson are all going to come back into the team. So yeah, I don't think he was really giving anything away there. I guess if Foden does not start, he'll just be able to say, he played midweek. But again, yeah, I've given my 2 cents on Foden, and yeah, your best bet is to have plans ready if we get some leaks. Okay, that is everything on Man City. As usual, I have all the quotes, everything that kind of pertains to FPL tweeted out. It's in my thread. It's just one thread this week, covering all of the press conferences over today and yesterday. So if you want to read Guardiola in full, everything he said that relates to FPL, you can do so. We'll move on to Newcastle. Callum Wilson has a little cold, but Howe expects the striker to be okay. Wilson revealed that he had what sounds like a very slight illness on a podcast he does with the BBC. Eddie Howe was not going to mention it in his press conference, as he tends not to do. It was just the fact that Wilson revealed it. That's why he got asked about it, because he had got asked about team news prior to the Wilson question and didn't mention him at all. One part of that is Howe being Howe. He just wouldn't tell you that anyway. There's just no way he would tell you that. The second is that it's unlikely to be a big issue. They've 3 games left before the World Cup break. One of them is a cup game. They're obviously flying. You'd be very surprised if Wilson didn't play. And yeah, I think the flag on FPL is just a bit heavy-handed. Obviously, once they flag a player, the best that FPL is going to rate him at is 75% because of the scale that they use. Just seems a bit over the top for what's after occurring, and what, like a cold is just so unlikely to keep him out. I think if that's what it is, you'd have to imagine he'd play. I would predict him to start. again, we could get early team news on that. No, excuse me, sorry, I have the fixtures mixed up. Newcastle play Sunday. Never mind. Newcastle are going to be training again tomorrow. Yeah. Excuse me, I mixed up the fixtures. No early Newcastle team news. So, yeah, I still expect Wilson to play. I guess there's a possibility that we could get training photos or something like that, or some news on Wilson before the deadline. Obviously not an early team league because they play Sunday. Sorry about that. Yeah, if there is anything, I'll tweet it out. But I do think that the flag is a bit much, and that he probably will play. I expect him to play. Again, maybe because of the situation with Man City, I think people are going to be waiting till last minute to make their transfers anyway. So, again, the deadline being 1:30 at 1 o'clock might be worth checking on Wilson. If there is anything, I'll have tweeted about it anyway, but I'm sure it'll be out there otherwise. Yeah, I guess that's the only thing to think of with him, is that it might be worth waiting till tomorrow on the off chance there's something, but the fact that the game is Sunday, it's less likely for that to happen. And as Howe said, he expects him to be fine. Otherwise at Newcastle, they have no new problems. St. Maximin and Shelby are fine after their cameos last weekend. Fabian Schar is available. Joe Ellington is suspended. And Howe, while praising Miguel Almiron, whose form obviously has been amazing, he said that he doesn't expect the winger to score, 30-yarders or worldies, as people seem to call them. Doesn't expect him to score those goals every week. And from Howe's point of view, he almost prefers the close range ones like the one he got against Fulham, which makes perfect sense because they're the higher XG chances. They're the ones that are likelier to go in. That's the positions that he wants his forwards to be taking up, close to the goal when the ball comes in behind the defence, that sort of thing. Yeah, so it was just a point of interest in Almiron, and it was like everybody else, Howe doesn't expect him to keep banging them in from range. Nobody expects that to last, but at the same time, obviously he was praising the guy, and the guy is playing absolutely unbelievable. Fair play to those who have him in their FPL teams already. I'm not one of those people. And yeah, it wouldn't put me off buying Almiron, the fact that he's been scoring from range, because he obviously can get the closer range ones too, and his price makes it a no-brainer if you have no other issues to be getting him in. Obviously, there are some other issues this week that might stop me and other people from getting Almiron, but yeah, a great pick, no doubt. Okay, on to Spurs. Son underwent a surgery today. I think Conte was kind of saying it was nearly happening at the same time-ish as his press conference. He's not going to play Premier League, obviously, before the break. Conte didn't say that, but that's what I think. And, seems extremely likely. There's very little information coming out of it. Probably they want to keep it as under wraps as possible because of whether or not it's going to affect him playing the World Cup, which was very unfortunate if he couldn't. But yeah, he's not going to play for Spurs in 15 or 16. Richarlison and Romero are also out for this weekend. Reports are suggesting that Romero won't play again before the World Cup as well. Ben Tanker could feature. He played midweek, came off. So he's got some bit of an ongoing issue, and he only partially trained today on Friday. But yeah, you'd be surprised if he didn't play. Spurs play on Sunday. So yeah, you'd expect him to make it back. Obviously, he's not an FPL option anyway. Lucas Moore is not 100%. He's struggling with a tendon problem. Conte is hoping that he'll play through the pain barrier basically until the World Cup break. So, they have 3 games left before the break. he obviously thinks and knows, I suppose, that he needs Mora because he's got so many other injuries in the forward department. But yeah, he's not at full capacity. And then Kulusevski, it sounds very much like he could make the bench. Sounds a bit like it's going to be up to Kulusevski whether he does or not. Conte was kind of saying if Kulusevski gives his availability, then Conte's going to grab it. But it sounds awfully like one way or the other that it'll be from the bench. Conte said 10, 20, 30 minutes he hopes for, kind of thing. So it'll be interesting to see if he's back or not. For Chelsea, Kepa is out probably until after the World Cup. He's got a plantar fascia issue with his foot injury, so unlikely that he's going to play again before the break. Same with Chilwell, he's obviously out until after the World Cup. He's getting a scan today that was probably happening after Potter's press conference. So we'll see what his World Cup chances are, but he's not going to play in 15 or 16. And Mateo Kovacic is available. For West Ham, Lucas Paqueta is back in training. His picture during the week, and Moyes confirmed that he's back on the grass with the team, so he could make the squad. It's Moisey. Would I be that surprised if Paqueta was straight back in the 11? No. The current sounds are that he'll be used from the bench, but obviously people buying Scamacca or who have Scamacca would, I guess, prefer that Paqueta's back in the team because of his creative abilities, and that link up seemed to be working well before the Brazilian midfielder suffered his shoulder injury. The prediction would be that he'll be on the bench, but definitely wouldn't be overly surprising if he got straight back in. And obviously West Ham play Sunday, so there's an extra day there too. There's no word on Fabianski, who came off injured last weekend, and West Ham rested Bowen, Scamacca, Antonio and Cresswell, among others. They didn't travel to Bucharest for their final Conference League group game. So the sort of issues that can sometimes plague teams who play Thursday, Sunday, and West Ham, Moyes has admitted that has been a problem in the past, and that definitely upsets teams at times, but that's not going to be a problem for West Ham this weekend because most of their first teamers didn't even travel, so they got their midweek rest despite the fixture. For Arsenal, Tomiyasu is injured. He came on in the Europa League and had to come off again, which never looks good. It's reportedly a hamstring. Arteta wouldn't disclose any information, as is his wont. So, type of injury probably unknown, and the severity is definitely not known. You'd be kind of surprised if he played at the weekend. So I'd expect White to play it right back, as he does anyway, or as he's been starting in the Premier League. And I'd be guessing Tierney plays on the other side. He suffered a knock at the end, but he's declared himself fine. Now, I usually say take player updates with a pinch of salt. But the fact that he was doing interviews after the game and things like that suggests that he probably will be grand. Arsenal obviously play Sunday too after their Thursday game. So yeah, you'd imagine Tierney will play. Zinchenko made the squad last night, but he wasn't brought on, so there's really no knowing on his fitness. But it'd be quite surprising if he started. And Bukayo Saka was used from the bench last night, so he's fit, he's available, and I would expect him to start on Sunday. For Man United, Ten Hag was unsure on Anthony, Jadon Sancho and Anthony Martial. His press conference, as with Arteta, they both had their press conferences after their Europa League games. They weren't speaking today. They both spoke Thursday night. So yeah, Ten Hag was basically unsure on those three players, didn't really give anything up, said we'll see. And Bruno Fernandes is suspended from Man United. But yeah, just to note that the news from Arsenal Man United came on Thursday night. I've put that in the tweets too, but just to be aware of it. So Crystal Palace, there are going to be late decisions on Edouard and Decore. Palace have training again tomorrow before their match on Sunday. So Vieira is going to make his decision then. Yeah, he said they were working today. That could have been indoor work. Didn't see any photos myself. And yeah, late decisions, late fitness tests for those two. For Brighton, they also have a late decision that'll be on Veltman. Welbeck is available. We might not start. Deserby mentioned basically how good they played against Chelsea. So he's going to be tempted to put out the same team. And he also praised Trossard while saying that he thinks the Belgian can do even better and that he can play 90 minutes more often, which is music to the ears if you own him in FPL or you plan on buying him. But yeah, that's more to note as well for Gameweek 17 on. But yeah, it's certainly going well for Brighton at the moment, and I think Trossard's definitely going to be on radars from right now, to be fair, and there's going to be a lot of interest in him post World Cup too. So that's Brighton. Liverpool, Henderson is available, Miller is out, and Klopp was questioned about changing system again. Kind of gets questioned about it nearly every week now, and he basically said that one of the reasons was because they weren't as solid defensively as they had been before. I think the numbers and the obvious numbers, like the goals conceded and the underlying stats and all of that bears that out. And we've kind of seen the erosion of Liverpool defenders as reliable FPL assets because of that. Not totally because of that. They obviously just aren't playing well anyway, and they're struggling in attack and defense. But yeah, he basically just admitted that the struggles in defense was one of the reasons that they've sort of changed what they're doing. So yeah, it's just something to keep an eye on. I mean, one wouldn't be touching a Liverpool defender at the moment, I don't think. At the same time, if you do own them and you're not getting rid, they're relatively okay differentials. Like you'd expect Spurs to score this weekend. Liverpool play Southampton at home, I believe, in 16. So that's still a good fixture, even if they are a lot more porous than they used to be. Again, it's sort of something to kind of take into account for the post-World Cup games and kind of changing thoughts on Liverpool, not being the kind of fantasy stalwarts that they have been over the past few seasons. So it'll be interesting to see exactly what system Klopp goes with in the last two league games, whether it's the kind of diamond or it's maybe with Sal up front on his own, or obviously Nunes is going to get used as well. Be interested to see what he does there and how the kind of system change bears out over the next couple of weeks. Definitely something to keep an eye on. Otherwise, Liverpool, yeah, their long-term injuries are the same, and Klopp did not report any new issues, and he's usually fairly upfront about those kind of things. To be fair, he wasn't about it. Well, Alexander-Arnold's ankle injury was something that he was a bit shaky on, but generally he's good enough to flag things if they have happened, and Liverpool being such a talked about club, things tend to come out of the wash anyway. But kind of as you were for Liverpool, really, in FPL terms, completely as you were. So Southampton, Romeo Lavia could make the squad, but he's had a knee issue this week that's separate to the injury that has kept him out for the last 2 months. Hassan reckons that he might make the squad, but they're going to have to take their time with him. Obviously, he's having some problems on coming back to training, which Hassan said can happen and tends to happen. Players, when they come back from long injury, they might get some other issue, which has happened to Lavia, unfortunately, but he still might make the squad. Belakotchap, after his dislocated shoulder, is now an option for Saints in Gameweek 15. And Stuart Armstrong could also be available. He had a knock. And Arsenal confirmed that Walker Peters won't play before the break, which we kind of expected anyway. For Everton, Dominic Calvert-Lewin has trained away this week. He obviously played his first 90 there last weekend, and Lampard said he's becoming more like himself. Bit of a nothing quote, but it's just to highlight that he's still on the way back, more so than he's like, the Calvert-Lewin that we knew. For anyone thinking about buying him, yeah, it's good that he's played 90, but I suppose Everton's attack doesn't really excite that much, and they're obviously still having to be careful with him and things like that. Otherwise, Godfrey's back in training. Mina is a step behind that, so don't expect to see Mina playing before the break. And he said that Patterson is ready to start. Patterson obviously came on last weekend, but he has to oust the mighty Seamus Coleman, Ireland legend, from the right back position. That, in fairness, probably will happen at some stage. Very hard to know whether it will happen this weekend or not, but Patterson's obviously an option there, and one will be, I think, monitoring and perhaps jumping on because of his price from Gameweek 17. For Wolves, Matheus Nunes is a doubt, and they're the same otherwise. And for Aston Villa, which is the last of the Friday press conferences, obviously Friday and including the late Thursday night Arsenal Man United news. But yeah, Aston Villa, Emery had his first press conference as Aston Villa manager today, so that would have been his unveiling, as happens in almost all of those. He didn't get asked about team news in the kind of open section. That was expected for his first presser. There is the chance that something comes out in the wash from the embargo, that he might have got asked about it in that section, in the written section as they call it. But yeah, no team news for Aston Villa, but I don't think we'll be, in big bother not knowing about Villa players at the moment. And yeah, we should find more out about them this weekend, during next week, and then obviously we have the break after Gameweek 16 anyway, so that's the story with Villa at the moment. So on to Thursday, Leeds in a stayers out on the left of the World Cup, and Marsh had plenty of praise for Somerville, but he wouldn't confirm that he's like first choice or got the shirt, as they say. But yeah, plenty of praise for the 4.4 million midfielder. Again, with the other issues that people are tending to have at the moment, it's unlikely that Somerville is going to be high on your list of priorities for transfers in, but I think I tweeted about this a few weeks ago and Marsh was on about him again, but he's definitely going to be very interesting from 17. See what happens in the next two games, and yeah, he's cheap as chips anyway, so even if you're looking for bench fodder in that region, obviously it'll be a case of whether you actually want a cheap midfielder or not, or a midfielder that's that cheap. That'll all depend on what formation we kind of want to go into Gameweek 17 with, which is another thing entirely. But Somerville, one to put on your watch list, keep an eye on, and yeah, go from Gameweek 17, I think, anyway. That's not to say he's not a good option now either. They obviously have a good fixture against Bournemouth tomorrow. They're then away to Spurs, which probably wouldn't fill you with complete joy. Not that Spurs are watertight or anything, but yeah, I think from my point of view, Somerville is definitely one to be looking at during the unlimited transfers period. For Fulham, Cabano is out long term, unfortunately, ruptured his Achilles, nasty, so he won't be seen for a good long time. Levin Kurzawa is back in training. I would guess he's extremely unlikely to either A, be fit enough to start, or B, oust Anthony Robinson at left back. Fulham relatively settled 11. And then Deckard Overeat is suspended, so Kenny Tete probably likely to come back in at right back. Onto Bournemouth. Brooks and Neto won't be seen until after the break, and likely the same with Lloyd Kelly. May make a return, but doesn't sound too promising for him for the last 2 game weeks. Dong Solanke is good to go. There was a late decision on his fitness last weekend. He obviously started, and he's trained all week, so he's fine. And on the downside for Solanke owners, also like myself, O'Neill had some praise from Moore after his 2-goal display last weekend. I don't have the exact stats to hand, but it does seem fairly obvious that Moore playing is not good for Solanke, because Moore goes up front, Solanke goes a bit deeper, and yeah, it's not exactly what you want. You want Solanke to be on the end of Bournemouth chances, not Moore, but it's hard to know exactly if he'll play. Like, they had a game plan for Spurs. Moore was obviously a big part of that. They'll have a different game plan for Leeds, completely different team, completely different style that they're facing, so it's hard to say exactly if Moore will play. Like, the basic fact that he got 2 goals and performed well, you'd probably expect him to start. Yeah, I think probably like myself, a lot of Solanke owners probably have the striker on the bench, so it doesn't make that big of a difference. It's definitely something to keep an eye on going forward, whether or not Moore kind of can cement his place in the 11, or whether he will kind of revert to a bench option and be used in specific games. Just one to follow for the moment. For Leicester, Johnny Evans is being assessed as ever. Yeah, he may or may not play. I don't think it makes a difference for FPL. You would imagine, in fairness, that Leicester would be stronger at the back with a fully fit Evans, but he's quite obviously not fully fit, but he's somewhere close. So he may or may not play. And Ricardo Pereira is expected back in January. He's a long-term absence there with an Achilles injury, but expected back in the new year. For Brentford, Jensen is fine. Norgard could feature, but they might wait till the cup game as well. And Ivan Toney is suspended. Very unfortunate for anyone who owns Ivan Toney. Decided to get himself a late yellow card and miss Nottingham Forest, which is definitely a fixture you want your striker in. But yeah, no Toney tomorrow. And on to Forest, who Brentford play. Biancone is out for the season, unfortunately, and Omar Richards could be seen post World Cup break. Otherwise, nothing from Cooper, so we're kind of assuming as is for Nottingham Forest. So that is all 20 teams covered. Hopefully I didn't ramble too much. If you made it to the end of the video and you've got any questions, feel free to tweet me. My thread is pinned to my profile. That is every quote, so everything I've gone through there and more. So if that's something you're interested in, you can check that out. And yeah, best luck for the game week. Hope it goes well. As I've said probably 6 or 7 times now, have your plans ready. We will hope that there is early team news, and if there's not, it's just the way it happens. But yeah, fingers crossed that we get something pre-deadline and that we're all ready to make our moves very quickly before there's any probable issue with the FPL site. So yeah, that is the Game Week 15 press conference roundup. Thanks for tuning in, and see you next week.